The night Ethan Cole pulled a dying woman from a burning bus, he had no idea she controlled every hospital bed in the city. He was just a broke mechanic trying to survive another shift. She was Dr. Alexandra Vale, a name that made hospital boards tremble and politicians bow. Their worlds should never have collided, but fate doesn't care about tax brackets or social distance. Sometimes it takes fire to forge the most unlikely connections. Stay with me until the end, and comment what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. The rain came down like God was trying to wash the city clean, but some stains run too deep. Ethan Cole knew that better than most. At 32, his hands were permanently darkened with engine grease, his back carried the weight of 12-hour shifts, and his heart bore the quiet desperation of a father who counted pennies at grocery store checkouts while his daughter waited at home. It was 11:40 on a Thursday night when everything changed. Ethan's wrench slipped, scraping his knuckles raw against the undercarriage of the ambulance he was repairing. He cursed under his breath, sucking the blood from his torn skin. The garage was empty except for him and the fluorescent lights that buzzed overhead like dying insects. Frank's auto and emergency vehicle repair wasn't much. A converted warehouse on the edge of the industrial district where the city's backbone workers kept the machines running that everyone else took for granted. Almost done, he muttered to himself, a habit he'd developed during the long, lonely nights. Just tighten this last bolt and you can get home to Emma. Emma. His 7-year-old daughter with her mother's eyes and his stubborn chin. She'd be asleep by now in their studio apartment 3 miles away, watched over by Mrs. Chen from downstairs who charged $20 a night that Ethan could barely afford but had no choice but to pay. Single fathers don't get the luxury of options. The bolt finally gave, twisting into place with a satisfying click. Ethan rolled out from under the ambulance and stood, his spine crackling like bubble wrap. His reflection caught in the ambulance's chrome, a tired man with dark circles under darker eyes, hair that needed cutting, a jaw that needed shaving. $20 for Mrs. Chen, $18 for Emma's asthma medication, $43 for the gas bill they'd threatened to cut off. The math never added up, no matter how many times he recalculated. He grabbed his jacket, a worn leather thing that had belonged to his father, and killed the lights. The rain hammered against the metal roof as he locked up, the sound almost violent in its intensity. The storm had rolled in an hour ago, turning the streets into rivers and the sky into something heavy and oppressive. Ethan's truck sat in the lot, a 1998 Ford that burned oil and made concerning noises but got him where he needed to go. He climbed in, started the engine, it took 3 tries, and pulled onto Highway 47, the route that would take him home through the heart of the city's industrial corridor. The wipers couldn't keep up with the downpour. Ethan leaned forward, squinting through the windshield at taillights that bled red in the rain-soaked darkness. Traffic was light at this hour, mostly truckers and night shift workers like himself, people who lived in the margins of the city's gleaming promises. He was thinking about Emma's upcoming parent-teacher conference, wondering if he could swap shifts to make it when he saw the smoke. At first it was just a gray smudge against the black sky, barely visible through the rain. But as Ethan came around the bend, his headlights caught something that made his heart seize. A city bus, one of the big articulated ones, wrapped around the concrete median barrier. The front section was completely crumpled, and orange flames were already crawling up the sides, fed by fuel leaking from the ruptured tank. Jesus Christ, Ethan breathed, his foot already slamming the brake. His truck fishtailed on the wet pavement before jerking to a stop on the shoulder. Through the rain-streaked windshield, he could see people stumbling out of the emergency exits, shadows moving frantically in the growing firelight. But screams cut through the storm, high, desperate screams that spoke of people still trapped inside. Ethan didn't think. Thinking was what kept you safe, what kept you in your lane, what kept you from doing stupid, dangerous things. He threw open his door and ran. The heat hit him 30 feet away, a physical force that dried the rain on his face and made his eyes water. The bus was a nightmare of twisted metal and shattered glass. The front section had accordioned on impact, and flames were spreading fast, consuming the rubber seals and vinyl seats with hungry efficiency. "Help! Somebody help us!" A man was trying to pry open a jammed door, his hands bloody. "There are still people inside." Ethan grabbed the crowbar from his truck bed. an old habit, always having tools within reach, and sprinted toward the bus. The rain was coming down so hard it felt like running through a waterfall, but the fire was winning, pushing back against the storm with rage and momentum. "Get back!" Ethan shouted to a woman who was trying to reach through a broken window. The whole thing could blow. He jammed the crowbar into the door seam the man had been working on. Together, they pulled. The door groaned, fought them, then suddenly gave way with a shriek of metal. A blast of smoke poured out, thick and black and choking. "Go! Get out now!" Ethan plunged into the smoke, his jacket pulled up over his mouth and nose. The interior was chaos, seats torn loose, luggage scattered everywhere, and the acrid stench of burning plastic. "Anyone still in here?" "Here! We're here!" Two teenage boys were trapped in the back, one with his leg caught under a collapsed seat. Ethan scrambled over debris, his hands finding the seat's edge. He heaved, muscles screaming, and the boy pulled free with a cry of pain. "Can you walk?" "I think so." "Then get your friend and get out. Now!" Ethan pushed them toward the exit. The flames were in the bus now, running along the ceiling like water flowing uphill. The heat was becoming unbearable. "Is there anyone else?" he shouted after them. "I don't know. Maybe in the front." Ethan turned toward the front section. Through the smoke, he could see twisted metal where the bus had folded on itself. The driver's area was completely destroyed, but beyond it, in what had been the first few rows, he saw movement, a hand reaching weakly into the smoke-filled air. "Hold on!" He climbed over seats that were burning now, feeling the heat through his jeans. The smoke was so thick he couldn't see more than a few feet. His lungs were on fire, each breath like swallowing hot sand. "I'm coming!" The hand belonged to a woman slumped against the window, unconscious or close to it. Her coat, some expensive-looking thing, was scorched along one side and blood trickled from a gash on her forehead. But it was her face that stopped Ethan for half a second. Even covered in soot and blood, there was something striking about her. Sharp cheekbones, a jawline that suggested someone used to authority, lips that even now, pressed together in pain, spoke of decisions made without hesitation. "Can you hear me?" He touched her shoulder. No response. Behind him, something exploded, probably a tire, and the whole bus shuddered. "All right, we're doing this the hard way." He grabbed her under the arms and pulled. She was heavier than he expected, not from weight, but from the dead weight of unconsciousness. Her head lolled against his chest as he dragged her back through the burning bus, over seats and through smoke so thick the world disappeared into gray nothing. His foot caught on something and they both went down. Ethan's shoulder hit the floor hard enough to send stars across his vision. The flames were everywhere now, the walls, the ceiling, the seats. In seconds, there would be nothing left but fire. "Not today!" Ethan gasped, forcing himself up. He got the woman across his shoulders in a fireman's carry, her weight settling across his back like a judgment. His legs shook as he stood, and for a terrifying moment he thought they wouldn't hold. But then he was moving, stumbling toward the exit that seemed impossibly far away. The smoke was so thick he was navigating by memory and instinct. His lungs screamed for air. His muscles were giving up, turning to water. The woman's necklace pressed against his neck, something metal and warm from her body heat. The exit appeared like salvation, a rectangle of storm-lit darkness. Ethan half fell through it, landing on his knees on the wet highway with the woman still across his shoulders. Hands grabbed him, pulling them both away from the bus. "Get back! Everyone get back!" someone was shouting. Ethan laid the woman on the ground, away from the bus. Her chest was rising and falling, shallow but steady. He pressed 2 fingers to her neck and found a pulse, weak, thready, but there. Rain poured down on both of them, washing the soot from her face in gray rivers. That's when he really saw her. She was maybe in her early 40s, with the kind of presence that didn't diminish even unconscious on a highway. Her hands were manicured, but he noticed small scars on her fingers, surgical scars, precise and deliberate. The coat, despite being half burned, was clearly expensive. But it was something else, something in the set of her jaw, the way her eyebrows drew together even in unconsciousness, that suggested this was a woman who commanded rather than followed. "Paramedics are coming!" someone shouted. In the distance, sirens wailed, growing closer. Ethan sat back on his heels, suddenly aware of the pain in his hands, his lungs, his shoulder. He looked at the bus, a roaring inferno now, flames reaching 30 feet into the rain-filled sky. How many seconds had he been inside? 30? 60? It felt like a lifetime. "You saved her, man." A young guy with a phone camera was filming everything. "You saved all of them. That was incredible." Ethan didn't feel incredible. He felt exhausted and terrified in retrospect, his hands shaking with adrenaline crash. Someone had to. The ambulances arrived first, followed by fire trucks. Ethan stepped back as paramedics swarmed the woman, checking vitals, starting an IV, loading her onto a stretcher. A police officer tried to take a statement, but the words came out scattered and incomplete. His mind kept replaying those moments inside the bus, the heat, the smoke, the certainty that he might not make it out. "Sir, you need to come to the hospital too," a young paramedic was saying. "You've got smoke inhalation, burns on your hands." "I'm fine." "Sir, I said I'm fine." Ethan pulled away, stumbling toward his truck. He needed to get home. Emma would wake up in a few hours, and he had to be there, had to pretend everything was normal, had to keep their small world from falling apart. The paramedic grabbed his arm. "At least let me look at your hands." Ethan's hands were blistered and raw, he realized. He'd been clenching the crowbar and the hot metal seats without feeling it. Now that the adrenaline was fading, the pain was coming in waves. 5 minutes, he conceded. "Then I'm leaving." While the paramedic cleaned and wrapped his hands, Ethan watched them load the woman into an ambulance. The doors closed and it pulled away, sirens screaming into the night. He'd probably never see her again. Just another stranger whose life briefly intersected with his before diverging back into their separate orbits. That's how the world worked, wasn't it? People crossed paths, moments happened, then everyone went back to their lives. The mechanic returned to his garage and his daughter. The woman in the expensive coat returned to whatever world she came from. 2 ships passing, or whatever the saying was. But as the paramedic finished wrapping his hands, something slipped out of Ethan's jacket pocket, the woman's necklace. He must have torn it free when he was carrying her. He picked it up, studying it in the flashing red and blue lights. It was delicate but substantial, white gold or platinum, with a small pendant, a medical caduceus entwined with what looked like ivy. On the back, an inscription, "To heal is to hope, AV." "You know whose that is?" the paramedic asked. "The woman I pulled out. It must have come off." "You should give it to the police. They'll return it to her." Ethan should have. He meant to. But something made him close his fist around it, the metal still warm. "Yeah, I'll do that." The paramedic gave him a knowing look but said nothing. "You're all set. Try to rest, drink lots of water, and if you have any trouble breathing, get to an ER immediately." "Sure." Ethan stood, every muscle protesting. His truck was still running, wipers still fighting the losing battle against the rain. He climbed in and sat for a long moment, staring at the burning bus in his rearview mirror. He'd saved someone's life tonight. Maybe several lives. It should have felt significant, momentous. Instead, it just felt like something he'd had to do. A moment where inaction wasn't possible. Now it was over, and he had to get home because Mrs. Chen charged by the hour and his daughter needed her father. Ethan pulled back onto the highway, leaving the fire and the chaos behind. The necklace sat on his dashboard, catching the streetlight as he drove through the rain-soaked city. In the morning, he'd call the hospital, ask about the woman, return her necklace. In the morning, things would make sense again. But morning was hours away and the rain kept falling. But by the time Ethan got home, it was almost 2 in the morning. Mrs. Chen was asleep on the couch, her reading glasses halfway down her nose, a Korean drama playing softly on the TV. He woke her gently. "Mr. Cole," she said, startled. Then her eyes widened. "What happened to you?" Ethan looked down at himself, soot-stained clothes, bandaged hands, the smell of smoke clinging to him like a ghost. "Long story, Mrs. Chen. Everything okay with Emma?" "She's fine, sleeping like an angel, but you—" "I'm okay, really." He pulled out his wallet, but she waved him off. "Tomorrow is fine. You look like you need to rest." After she left, Ethan stood in the doorway of Emma's room, watching her sleep. She was curled up with the stuffed rabbit his ex-wife had bought her before disappearing into a new life without them. Emma's breathing was even, her face peaceful. She didn't know that tonight her father had run into a burning bus, that he could have died, that she could have woken up to a world without him. The thought made his chest tight. He was all she had. If he'd made a different choice tonight, if he'd driven past, if he'd been a second slower, he couldn't think about it. Ethan showered, washing the soot and fear down the drain. His hands screamed when the water hit the burns, but he gritted his teeth and endured it. The necklace sat on the bathroom counter, still carrying faint warmth from his pocket. He picked it up, studying the inscription again. To heal is to hope. Who was she? The woman with the authoritative face and the surgical scars on her hands. What kind of life did she live that she rode city buses at midnight? The expensive coat suggested money, but rich people didn't usually take public transit in this city. Maybe her car had broken down. Maybe she was slumming. Maybe it didn't matter. He'd call the hospital tomorrow, return the necklace, check on her condition. Then it would be over, and life would return to its grinding normalcy. Ethan set his alarm for 6. Emma needed to be at school by 8 and collapsed into bed. His body ached, his lungs burned, and his hands throbbed despite the painkillers the paramedic had given him. But sleep was a long time coming. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw fire and smoke, felt the weight of a stranger across his shoulders, heard the screams of people trapped in metal and flame. He'd done something tonight that most people would call brave, heroic even. But Ethan didn't feel like a hero. He felt like a man who'd stumbled into a moment bigger than himself and done the only thing possible. Now that moment was passing, fading into the past like smoke dissipating in rain. Outside, the storm finally began to break. The rain softened to a steady patter against the windows. Somewhere in the city, in some hospital bed, the woman he'd saved was either waking up or still lost in unconsciousness. Either way, their story was over before it had really begun. Or so Ethan thought. But fate, if you believe in such things, has a way of weaving threads that seem cut. And sometimes, the people who pull you out of fire are the ones who end up being pulled into something far more complicated than they ever bargained for. The necklace gleamed on his nightstand in the darkness, a small promise of connections not yet severed. Morning came too soon. Emma was already awake when Ethan's alarm went off, sitting cross-legged on the couch with a bowl of cereal balanced on her knees, watching cartoons with the volume turned low. She looked up when he emerged from the bedroom, her eyes immediately finding the bandages on his hands. "Daddy, what happened to your hands?" Ethan had prepared for this question during his restless hours of sleep. "Just an accident at work, sweetheart. Nothing serious." "Does it hurt?" "A little, but I've had worse." He ruffled her hair as he passed, heading to the kitchen to start coffee. The apartment was small enough that everything was within reach: kitchen, living room, and Emma's room, all visible from where he stood. Efficiency, the real estate agent had called it when he'd signed the lease. Cramped was the word Ethan would have used. Emma followed him, her bare feet padding on the worn linoleum. "Mrs. Chen said you came home really late, later than usual." "Had some extra work to finish up." You always have extra work." There was no accusation in her voice, just a 7-year-old's observation of her reality. It still cut deeper than any burn on his hands. "I know, Em. I'm sorry." She shrugged, scooping another bite of cereal. "It's okay. Mrs. Chen taught me how to say good morning in Korean. Want to hear?" "Always." As Emma chattered about her evening with Mrs. Chen, Ethan made her lunch, signed a permission slip for a field trip he couldn't afford to chaperone, and tried not to think about the woman whose necklace was still sitting on his nightstand. He'd call the hospital during his lunch break, he decided. Return the necklace, make sure she was all right, and close that chapter. But when he dropped Emma at school and headed to the garage, the morning exploded into chaos that pushed everything else from his mind. Frank, his boss, was waiting with 3 emergency repairs that needed to be done by noon, and a citation from the city inspector about some violation Ethan didn't have time to read. The hours blurred into a haze of engines and exhaust, of parts that didn't fit quite right, and machines that fought every attempt to fix them. It was almost 3 in the afternoon when he finally surfaced for air, his hands screaming under the bandages, his back locked up from hours bent over engine blocks. He'd missed lunch entirely. His phone showed 2 missed calls from Emma's school, probably about the unpaid lunch account, and a text from Mrs. Chen asking if he needed her tonight. $20 more he didn't have. The necklace. He'd forgotten about the necklace. Ethan wiped his hands on a rag and pulled out his phone, Googling the nearest hospital. St. Michael's was closest to where the accident had happened. He dialed, waded through an automated menu, and finally reached a human. St. Michael's, how can I direct your call? Hi, I'm trying to check on a patient who was brought in last night. Bus accident on Highway 47? Are you family? No, I was there. I helped pull people out. I just wanted to make sure everyone was okay. A pause. Sir, I can't give out patient information to non-family members. HIPAA regulations. Right, of course, I understand. Ethan rubbed his face, leaving a streak of grease he didn't notice. What if I wanted to return something to her, a piece of jewelry that came off during the rescue? You could drop it off at the main desk and we'd make sure it gets to the right person. Could you at least tell me if she's okay? The woman from the front of the bus? She was unconscious when they took her. Another pause, longer this time. Hold on, let me transfer you to patient services. The hold music was an instrumental version of a song Ethan didn't recognize. He waited, watching Frank yell at a delivery driver through the office window. 3 minutes passed. 4. Hello? A different voice, older, female. This is patient services. I understand you're inquiring about the bus accident victims? Yes, ma'am. Specifically the woman who was pulled from the front section. I have her necklace and... I'm sorry, sir, but that patient was transferred this morning. I'm not able to provide any additional information. Transferred? To where? I can't disclose that, but if you'd like to leave the necklace with us, we have her contact information on file and can arrange for its return. Something about the woman's tone bothered Ethan. It was too careful, too practiced, like she was following a script. Is she okay, though? Can you at least tell me that? Sir, I really can't. I pulled her out of a burning bus. Ethan's voice came out harder than he intended. I'm not some random person calling. I just want to know if she's all right. A long silence. Then, the patient is stable and recovering. That's all I can tell you. If you'd like to drop off the necklace, no, it's fine. Thank you. Ethan hung up before she could say anything else. Transferred. Stable and recovering. The words should have brought relief, but instead they left him unsettled. Something felt off, though he couldn't articulate what. Maybe it was just the reality of modern healthcare. Privacy laws and bureaucratic procedures that turned simple questions into obstacles. He slipped the phone back in his pocket and returned to work. The necklace could wait another day. He had an ambulance transmission to rebuild and a daughter to pick up from after-school care in 2 hours. But that night, after Emma was asleep and he was alone with a beer he couldn't really afford, Ethan found himself holding the necklace again. The pendant caught the lamplight, the caduceus and ivy glinting. To heal is to hope. A.V. Who was A.V.? A doctor, maybe, given the medical symbol? Or someone in healthcare? The surgical scars on her fingers suggested someone who worked with their hands in a precise, delicate way. A surgeon would fit. Ethan Googled AV surgeon and got hundreds of results. Too broad. He tried AV doctor bus accident and found a local news article from this morning. Miracle on Highway 47. Hero saves multiple lives in bus fire. There was a grainy photo from someone's phone showing a figure carrying someone from the burning bus. Him, though you couldn't make out details. The article mentioned 7 people hospitalized, 2 critical, but no names. Standard practice for privacy. He scrolled through the comments, people calling the rescuer a hero, others complaining about bus safety, someone promoting their mixtape. Nothing useful. Nothing about the woman. He was about to close the browser when another article caught his eye, dated from this afternoon. Vale Health Systems CEO injured in transit accident. Spokesperson confirms full recovery expected. Ethan clicked it, his heart suddenly beating faster. Dr. Alexandra Vale, CEO and founder of Vale Health Systems, the city's largest private hospital network, was among those injured in Thursday night's bus accident on Highway 47. A spokesperson for Vale Health Systems confirmed that Dr. Vale sustained minor injuries and is expected to make a full recovery. Dr. Vale is grateful to the emergency responders and Good Samaritans who assisted at the scene, the statement read. She looks forward to returning to work next week. Vale Health Systems operates 12 hospitals and 43 urgent care facilities across the metropolitan area, employing over 30,000 healthcare workers. The article included a professional photo. Even in corporate headshot form, Ethan recognized her immediately. The sharp cheekbones, the authoritative jaw, the eyes that suggested someone who didn't accept no as an answer. But in this photo, she was polished and powerful, wearing a white coat over a designer suit, standing in front of a hospital with her arms crossed and a slight smile that spoke of confidence earned through achievement. Dr. Alexandra Vale, A.V. Ethan set down his beer, his mind reeling. He'd pulled one of the most powerful people in the city from a burning bus, the woman who owned practically every hospital bed, every MRI machine, every surgical suite, the woman whose organization employed thousands and whose decisions affected tens of thousands more. And she'd been riding a city bus at midnight. That detail gnawed at him. Why would someone worth, he Googled quickly, an estimated $300 million ride public transit? It didn't make sense, unless her car had broken down, or her driver had quit, or maybe she had her reasons that were none of his business. Ethan looked at the necklace again with new understanding. This wasn't just jewelry. This was probably worth more than his truck. And he'd been carrying it around in his pocket for 2 days like loose change. He needed to return it. But now that he knew who she was, the simple act of dropping it at a hospital desk felt insufficient. This required something more direct, more personal. He'd saved her life. The least she deserved was to get her necklace back from his hand, not from some administrator who might lose it in a desk drawer. But how did you contact someone like Dr. Alexandra Vale? It wasn't like he could just call her up. People like her had assistants and secretaries and probably bodyguards. People like him didn't get access. Ethan turned the pendant over in his fingers, studying the inscription. To heal is to hope. What had that meant to her? Who had given it to her? The questions multiplied, but he had no way to answer them. He finished his beer and went to bed. The necklace returned to his nightstand. Tomorrow he'd figure something out. Tomorrow he'd find a way to return it properly. Tomorrow the whole strange episode would finally be over, but tomorrow had other plans. The call came at 7:30 a.m., just as Ethan was pouring Emma's juice. "Is this Ethan Cole?" A woman's voice, professional and crisp. "Yes? Who's this?" "My name is Patricia Mendoza. I'm the chief of staff at Vale Health Systems. I'm calling about the bus accident 2 nights ago. I understand you were involved in the rescue?" Ethan's grip tightened on the phone. "How did you get this number?" "The police report listed you as a witness. Mr. Cole, Dr. Vale would like to meet with you personally to express her gratitude." "That's not necessary. It's very necessary to Dr. Vale. Would you be available this afternoon, say 4 o'clock at Vale Medical Center? I work until 6. I'm sure your employer would understand if you needed to leave early for a few hours. This is quite important to Dr. Vale." There was something in the woman's tone that suggested this wasn't really a request. Ethan glanced at Emma, who was watching him with curious eyes. "I don't know. I have to pick up my daughter. We can send a car for you at 3:30. It will have you back in plenty of time for pickup. Dr. Vale won't take much of your time. She simply wants to thank you in person." Ethan wanted to refuse. The whole thing felt strange and uncomfortable. But another part of him, the part that had been raised to be polite, that still believed in doing the right thing even when it was inconvenient, couldn't bring himself to say no to a woman who just wanted to say thank you. "All right, 3:30. But I can drive myself." "The car will be more convenient, I assure you. It will pick you up at—" She paused, and Ethan heard typing, "Frank's Auto and Emergency Vehicle Repair on Industrial Boulevard." "You know where I work?" "We're very thorough, Mr. Cole. 3:30 sharp. The driver will ask for you by name." She hung up before he could respond. Ethan stared at his phone, unsettled. They knew where he worked. They knew his full name. They'd gotten his phone number from a police report that probably wasn't public record yet. That level of access spoke to power and resources he couldn't begin to imagine. "Who was that, Daddy?" Emma asked around a mouthful of toast. "Just someone from work." The lie came easily, but it tasted wrong. Come on, finish up. We need to get going. The morning dragged. Every customer seemed to want to chat. Every repair took twice as long as it should. Frank noticed his distraction and called him into the office. You all right, Cole? You've been off since that bus thing. I'm fine. Your hands healing up? Yeah. Ethan looked down at the bandages, now grimy with work. Listen, I need to leave early today. 3:30, something came up. Frank's eyebrows rose. In 3 years, Ethan had never asked to leave early. Everything okay with Emma? She's fine. It's personal. I'll make up the hours tomorrow. Take the time. You earned it. Frank leaned back in his chair, studying him. That was a hell of a thing you did, pulling those people out. I saw the video some kid posted online. Looked like you nearly got yourself killed. Someone had to do it. Maybe, but you're the one who did. Frank pulled out a greasy envelope from his desk drawer. This came for you this morning. Courier. Ethan took the envelope, frowning. Inside was a check for $5,000 and a note on expensive stationery. Mr. Cole, a small token of gratitude from the families of the passengers you saved, with deepest thanks. $5,000. That was 3 months' rent. That was Emma's medical bills. That was the transmission dying in his truck and still having money left over. What is it? Frank asked. Nothing. Just nothing. Ethan folded the check and stuffed it in his pocket, his mind spinning. $5,000 from grateful families? Or from someone else entirely? At 3:30 exactly, a black Lincoln Town car pulled up in front of the garage. The driver, a man in his 50s wearing a suit that probably cost more than Ethan made in a month, stepped out and approached. Mr. Ethan Cole? That's me. I'm here to take you to Vale Medical Center. Dr. Vale is expecting you. Ethan grabbed his jacket and told Frank he'd see him tomorrow. The Lincoln's interior smelled like leather and money. The driver said nothing as they pulled into traffic, heading toward the center of the city where the tall buildings clustered like teeth. Ethan had been to downtown maybe twice in his life. This wasn't his world. His world was the industrial edges, the forgotten neighborhoods, the places where paint peeled and grass grew through cracks in parking lots. But as the Lincoln glided through streets that got progressively cleaner and more expensive, Ethan felt the distance between his life and Dr. Alexandra Vale's life expanding with every mile. Vale Medical Center occupied an entire city block. The building was all glass and steel, reflecting the afternoon sun like a mirror. The driver pulled up to a private entrance on the side where a woman in a pantsuit was waiting. Mr. Cole, I'm Patricia Mendoza. We spoke on the phone. She was younger than her voice had suggested, maybe 50, with gray-streaked hair pulled back severely and eyes that missed nothing. She shook his hand with a grip that suggested she could probably arm wrestle him to a draw. Dr. Vale is finishing up a meeting. If you'll follow me. The interior of the hospital was nothing like the public hospitals Ethan had visited with Emma. This was more like a luxury hotel, marble floors, art on the walls, soft lighting that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. Patricia led him to an elevator that required a key card to access, then up to the top floor. I should mention, Patricia said as they rose, that Dr. Vale has been quite insistent about meeting you. She doesn't normally take this kind of time out of her schedule, but she felt it was important. I really didn't do anything special. You saved her life, Mr. Cole. I'd say that's fairly special. The elevator doors opened into a reception area that screamed executive power, more art, more marble, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Please have a seat. Dr. Vale will be with you shortly. Shortly turned out to be 20 minutes. Ethan sat in a chair that was too expensive to be comfortable and tried not to feel out of place. A few people passed through, doctors in white coats, administrators in business attire, all of them moving with the purposeful efficiency of people who had important places to be. Finally, a door opened and Patricia reappeared. Dr. Vale will see you now. The office was enormous, bigger than Ethan's entire apartment. One wall was entirely windows, offering a view of the city that made his head spin with vertigo and possibility. The furniture was modern and minimal, all clean lines and expensive materials. And behind a desk that looked like it had been carved from a single piece of dark wood sat Dr. Alexandra Vale. She stood as he entered, and Ethan got his first clear look at her without smoke and fire and rain. She was wearing dark slacks and a cream-colored blouse, her hair pulled back in a way that was professional without being severe. There was a small bandage on her temple where the gash had been, and she moved carefully, suggesting ribs that were probably bruised or cracked. But her eyes, sharp and intensely focused, pinned him in place. "Mr. Cole?" Her voice was exactly as he'd imagined, cultured, controlled, carrying the weight of someone used to being obeyed. "Thank you for coming." "Ma'am," it was all he could manage. "Please, sit." She gestured to a chair across from her desk, then winced slightly at the movement. "Forgive me, I'm still a bit sore." Ethan sat, feeling massive and clumsy in the elegant space. His work boots left faint marks on the pristine floor. His hands, even cleaned, still carried grease in the creases. Dr. Vale lowered herself back into her chair with the careful movements of someone managing pain. "I wanted to meet you in person to say thank you. According to the fire department's report, without your intervention, I likely would not have survived. The bus exploded less than a minute after you pulled me out. Anyone would have done the same thing. But they didn't. You did." She leaned forward slightly, studying him with an intensity that was both unsettling and compelling. "The paramedics said you went back into that bus 3 times, that you carried me out on your shoulders while the entire vehicle was engulfed. That takes a particular kind of courage. Or stupidity." A ghost of a smile touched her lips. "Perhaps both. Courage and stupidity often look identical in the moment." She opened a drawer and pulled out a folder. "I've learned a bit about you, Mr. Cole. I hope you don't mind. Ethan Cole, 32, mechanic at Frank's Auto for 3 years. Before that, various positions at repair shops around the city. Single father to Emma Cole, age 7. No criminal record, no outstanding debts beyond standard medical bills and rent. By all accounts, a decent man working hard to support his daughter." The casual recitation of his life felt like an invasion, but Ethan kept his voice level. "You've been thorough. I like to know who I'm dealing with. It's a habit that served me well." She closed the folder. "Mr. Cole." "Ethan. May I call you Ethan?" "Sure." "Ethan, I wanted to meet you because I believe in the principle of reciprocity. You did something extraordinary for me. I'd like to do something for you in return." "You already did. The check this morning. That wasn't from me. That was genuinely from the other families. What I'm offering is more substantial." She pulled out another folder, this one thicker. "I'm offering you a job." Ethan blinked. "A job?" "A full-time position as a senior maintenance technician in my hospital systems facilities department. The position includes full medical benefits, which would cover your daughter's asthma medication completely, a salary of $65,000 a year, pension contributions, and 2 weeks paid vacation." The numbers hit Ethan like physical blows. 65,000. That was almost double what he made now. That was Emma's medication without counting pennies. That was stability. "Why?" The word came out harsher than he intended. "You don't know me. You don't know if I'm any good at my job." "I know you're good at your job. Frank Thompson speaks very highly of your work. I called him this morning." "You called Frank?" "I'm thorough, remember?" Dr. Vale leaned back, wincing again. "Ethan, I'm not offering you charity. I need good maintenance staff, people who understand complex systems and can work under pressure. You clearly can do both. And yes, I'm grateful that you saved my life. So perhaps I'm giving you an opportunity you might not have gotten otherwise. Is that so wrong?" Ethan looked down at his hands, at the bandages and the grease and the calluses. $65,000. Medical benefits, stability, everything he'd been struggling toward for years suddenly offered on a silver platter by a woman he'd pulled from fire. What's the catch? No catch, just a job offer from someone who believes in repaying her debts. She slid a business card across the desk. "Think about it. Call me when you decide. I hope you'll say yes." Ethan picked up the card, heavy stock, embossed lettering, her direct number. "I have something of yours." He reached into his jacket and pulled out the necklace. "This came off during the rescue." Dr. Vale's hand went to her throat, finding the absence. "I didn't even realize." She took the necklace.
her expression softening in a way that made her suddenly seem more human, less like an executive and more like a person. "Thank you. This was a gift from my mother before she passed. It means everything." "The inscription," Ethan said, "to heal is to hope." "That's beautiful." "My mother was a nurse. She used to say that to her patients." Dr. Vale fastened the necklace around her throat, her fingers trembling slightly. "She gave this to me when I finished medical school, told me to never forget why I chose this path."
For a moment they sat in silence, two strangers bound by fire and chance. "I should go," Ethan said finally. "I have to pick up my daughter." "Of course." Dr. Vale stood again, extending her hand. "Thank you, Ethan, for the necklace, and for my life." Her grip was firm, her hand soft but marked with those precise surgical scars. Ethan held it for a moment, feeling the weight of gratitude and obligation and possibility. "Think about the job," she said as he turned to leave. "I will." The Lincoln drove him back to the garage in silence. Ethan stared out the window, watching his city slide past, the downtown towers giving way to strip malls, giving way to the industrial wasteland he called home. Two worlds separated by miles and money and circumstances of birth. But Dr. Alexandra Vale had built a bridge between them, and Ethan had to decide if he was brave enough or stupid enough to cross it. Emma was waiting outside the after-school program when Ethan pulled up, her backpack almost as big as she was. She climbed into the truck with the practiced efficiency of a child who'd done this 1,000 times, buckling herself in before he could help. "You're late," she said, not accusatory, just stating a fact. "I know, I'm sorry, something came up at work." "You always say that?" She pulled out a crumpled paper from her backpack. "Mrs. Patterson says I need new shoes for gym class. These ones are too small." Ethan glanced at her feet. The sneakers were indeed tight, her toes probably cramped. How long had she been wearing them without complaining? "We'll get you new ones this weekend." "You said that last month." "I mean it this time." And he did. Between the $5,000 check and the job offer sitting in his pocket like a live grenade, new shoes suddenly felt possible. Everything suddenly felt possible, and that terrified him more than the burning bus had. They stopped at the grocery store on the way home. Ethan found himself putting things in the cart without checking prices first. The cereal Emma liked instead of the store brand, fresh fruit instead of canned, the good peanut butter. Emma noticed. "Are we rich now?" she asked, eyeing the cart with suspicion. "No, baby, just had a good week at work." "You always say we have to be careful with money." "We do, but sometimes it's okay to get the things we like." At the checkout, the total came to $83. A month ago, that would have triggered a minor panic attack. Tonight, Ethan handed over his card without his stomach clenching. The $5,000 check was already deposited via his phone, already showing in his account like a small miracle. But the job offer, that was the real question mark. $65,000. Benefits, stability, everything he needed. So why did it feel like accepting charity? That night, after Emma was asleep, Ethan sat at the kitchen table with Dr. Vale's business card in front of him. He'd looked up the position online, Senior Maintenance Technician at Vale Health Systems. The job posting listed requirements he definitely met. 5 years experience, knowledge of HVAC systems, electrical work, plumbing. The salary range was listed as $55,000 to $70,000 depending on experience. She'd offered him $65,000 right out of the gate, top of the range for someone she'd never seen work, because he'd pulled her from a fire. Ethan's phone buzzed. A text from Frank. "Heard you met with Vale. That's a good opportunity, Cole. Don't be stupid and pass it up." So Frank knew. Of course he did. Dr. Vale had called him, done her research, made sure Ethan was worth the investment. Nothing about this was accidental or impulsive. She'd calculated every angle, assessed every risk. That's what successful people did. They didn't make decisions based on gratitude alone. Another text. This one from a number he didn't recognize. "Mr. Cole, this is Patricia Mendoza. Dr. Vale asked me to follow up regarding the position. Do you have any questions about the offer?" Ethan stared at his phone. It was almost 11 at night. Did these people ever sleep? He typed, Why me? There must be dozens of qualified people already applying. The response came within seconds. Dr. Vale believes in recognizing character as well as competence. You demonstrated both. The offer stands until Friday. We hope you'll accept. Friday. 3 days to make a decision that would change his life and Emma's. 3 days to figure out if he was grateful or proud or both. Ethan looked around his apartment. The water stain on the ceiling he kept meaning to fix, the radiator that clanked all night, the window that didn't quite close all the way. This was his life. This was what he'd built from nothing after Emma's mother left, after the jobs that didn't work out, after all the small failures that accumulated into the person he was now. Was he really going to let pride keep him here? Keep Emma here? He picked up his phone and dialed before he could talk himself out of it. Patricia Mendoza answered on the first ring, as if she'd been waiting. Mr. Cole? I'll take the job. When do I start? There was a smile in her voice. Monday. Come to the main hospital at 8 a.m. We'll handle all the paperwork and get you oriented. Welcome to Vale Health Systems, Mr. Cole. After he hung up, Ethan sat in the dark kitchen for a long time, feeling like he'd just jumped off a cliff and wasn't sure if he'd packed a parachute. But he'd jumped. That was the important part. He'd finally jumped. The weekend passed in a blur of logistics. Ethan gave Frank his 2 weeks' notice, though Frank waved him off. You think I'm going to make you work 2 weeks? Get out of here, Cole. Start your new life. You earned it. I don't want to leave you in a bind. I'll manage. I always do. Frank shook his hand, his grip firm. You did good, kid. That thing with the bus, this job, you did good. Don't forget where you came from, but don't feel bad about leaving either. Ethan took Emma shoe shopping on Saturday. They found a pair of sneakers she loved, bright purple with silver laces. When she tried them on, her face lit up in a way that made the $40 price tag feel like nothing. They're perfect, Daddy. Then they're yours. In the checkout line, Emma looked up at him with serious eyes. Something's different. You're happy. I'm always happy when I'm with you. No, I mean really happy, like something good happened. Ethan crouched down to her level. I got a new job, Em, a better one, better pay, better benefits. Things are going to be easier for us. Does that mean we can get a bigger apartment? Maybe, eventually. With 2 bedrooms? So I don't have to sleep in a room the size of a closet? Ethan laughed, pulling her into a hug. Yes, with 2 bedrooms. I promise. That night he lay in bed thinking about promises. He'd made so many to Emma over the years, promises about being there, about taking care of her, about making things better. Most of them he'd kept, but some had bent under the weight of reality. This promise felt different. This one felt possible. Monday morning arrived cold and clear. Ethan dressed in his best jeans and a button-down shirt Frank had lent him for the occasion. Emma insisted on taking a picture before they left. For when you're famous, she said, holding up her phone. I'm not going to be famous, baby. I'm just going to be fixing things at a hospital. Still, you never know. Mrs. Chen had agreed to get Emma to school, refusing Ethan's offer of payment. First day at new job, she'd said. This is good luck. I don't take money for good luck. The main hospital was even more impressive in the morning light. Ethan parked in the visitor lot, feeling out of place among the Mercedes and BMWs. His truck, with its rust spots and concerning engine noise, looked like it had wandered in from another era. Patricia Mendoza met him in the lobby, looking exactly as she had Friday. Crisp, professional, slightly terrifying. Right on time. Good. Dr. Vale appreciates punctuality. She handed him a badge on a lanyard. This is your access card. It'll get you into the maintenance areas, break rooms, and most common spaces. Follow me. The next 3 hours were a whirlwind of paperwork, orientation videos, safety protocols, and introductions to people whose names Ethan immediately forgot. The maintenance department was in the basement, a sprawling network of tunnels and equipment rooms that serviced the entire hospital complex. His new supervisor was a guy named Marcus Chen, no relation to Mrs. Chen, who seemed genuinely pleased to have someone with Ethan's experience joining the team. We're stretched thin, Marcus explained, showing Ethan around the main shop. 12 hospitals, 43 urgent care facilities, and we're responsible for keeping it all running. HVAC, electrical, plumbing, medical gas systems, emergency generators. If it breaks, we fix it. Fast. The shop was well equipped, organized, nothing like Frank's chaotic garage. Everything had its place, every tool accounted for. It was almost intimidating in its efficiency. "You'll start by shadowing Rodriguez for the week," Marcus continued, gesturing to a woman in coveralls who was working on what looked like a surgical table. "She'll show you our systems, how we log repairs, emergency protocols. After that, you'll be on your own rotation." Rodriguez looked up, wiping her hands on a rag. She was maybe 50, with gray hair and a braid, and the confident air of someone who'd been fixing things longer than Ethan had been alive. "You're the bus guy," she said, not as a question. "Yeah. Whole hospital's been talking about it. You pulled Dr. Vale out of a fire." She studied him with frank curiosity. "Takes balls, or stupidity, I haven't decided which." "Little of both, probably." She laughed. "All right, bus guy, let's see if you can fix an autoclave. These things are temperamental as hell." The morning disappeared into work that felt both familiar and foreign. The principles were the same. Things broke. You figured out why. You fixed them. But the scale and stakes were different. At Frank's garage, if he misdiagnosed a problem, someone's car didn't start. Here, if he screwed up a medical gas system or an emergency generator, people could die. No pressure. Lunch was in the employee cafeteria, a space that was worlds better than the break room at Frank's. Rodriguez sat with him, joined by two other techs, Jim and Devante, who both seemed curious about the new guy who'd saved their boss's life. "So what's she like?" Devante asked around a mouthful of sandwich. "Dr. Vale? We never see her down in the basement. I only met her once. She seemed intense, professional." "That's diplomatic," Jim laughed. "I've worked here 8 years. She's brilliant, demanding, and absolutely terrifying when something goes wrong. But fair. You do good work, she notices. You screw up, she definitely notices." "She came up from nothing, you know," Rodriguez said. "Her mom was a nurse at St. Michael's back in the day. Single mother, worked doubles to put Alexandra through school. Dr. Vale got into medical school on scholarships, did her residency at Johns Hopkins, then came back here and started building this empire. She's self-made in a way most rich people aren't." Ethan thought about the necklace, the inscription, the way Dr. Vale's expression had softened when she saw it. To heal is to hope. Her mother's words carried close to her heart. "She ever married?" The question came out before Ethan could stop it. The three techs exchanged glances. "There was someone," Rodriguez said carefully. "Years ago. Before my time. Another doctor, I think. Didn't work out. She's been single as long as I've known her. Married to the job, basically." "Can't blame her," Jim said. "Running an organization this size, that's a full-time obsession, not just a job." After lunch, Rodriguez took Ethan on a tour of the facility, showing him the critical systems that couldn't fail, the emergency generators that powered operating rooms, the medical gas lines that fed oxygen to patient rooms, the HVAC systems that maintained sterile environments. It was overwhelming and fascinating in equal measure. They were checking a backup generator on the 3rd floor when they heard it. Alarms, urgent voices, the organized chaos of a medical emergency. Rodriguez grabbed her radio. "This is Rodriguez. What's the situation?" A crackling voice responded, "Fire alarm in the east wing, 4th floor. Smoke detected in room 412. Ethan's body responded before his mind caught up. He was already moving toward the stairs when Rodriguez caught his arm. "Whoa, bus guy. We have protocols. Fire team handles this. Someone might be trapped. And if they are, the fire team will get them. Our job is to make sure the safety systems work, not to play hero." But she was already following him up the stairs, radio in hand. "Fire team, this is Rodriguez. We're heading up to check the suppression systems." The 4th floor was controlled chaos. Nurses were evacuating patients, wheeling beds into the hallway, their movements practiced and efficient. Smoke was indeed coming from room 412, thin and gray, not the thick black smoke from the bus, but concerning nonetheless. A firefighter in full gear emerged from the room carrying a small fire extinguisher. "Small electrical fire in the monitor equipment. It's out, but we need to check the whole room for damage." Ethan looked past him into the room. The patient, an elderly man, was still in bed, eyes wide with fear, oxygen line still connected. "Why isn't he evacuated?" Ethan asked. "Can't move him yet. He's on critical monitoring post-surgery. We need to verify the backup systems before we can disconnect. I can check the backups, Ethan said, already moving into the room. Colt, wait. Rodriguez followed, but Ethan was already examining the wall panel where the monitors connected. The fire had damaged the primary monitor, but the backups were intact. Ethan quickly verified the connections, checked the power supply, confirmed the redundant systems were functioning. Backups are good. You can move him. The nurses moved in immediately, efficiently disconnecting the patient from the damaged equipment and reconnecting him to portable monitors. Within 2 minutes, he was being wheeled to safety. Rodriguez watched the whole thing with an unreadable expression. When the room was clear, she turned to Ethan. That was good work. Fast thinking, proper verification. But you need to slow down. This isn't a burning bus. We have procedures for a reason. Someone needed help. And we helped them. By doing our job correctly, not by rushing in without thinking. She softened slightly. Look, I get it. You're wired to respond, to act. That's good. But here, you need to channel that into following protocols. People's lives depend on us doing things right, not just doing things fast. Ethan nodded, feeling chastened and frustrated in equal measure. She was right. He knew she was right. But the sight of smoke, the smell of burning electronics, had triggered something in him, a need to act, to fix, to save. The rest of the afternoon was quieter. They finished the generator checks, logged the fire incident report, and helped replace the damaged monitoring equipment in room 412. By the time 5 o'clock rolled around, Ethan was exhausted in a way that felt different from his exhaustion at Frank's. This was mental fatigue, the weight of responsibility and new systems, and the fear of screwing up something important. He was gathering his things when Patricia Mendoza appeared in the shop doorway. "Mr. Cole? Dr. Vale would like a word if you have a moment." Rodriguez raised her eyebrows as Ethan followed Patricia to the elevator. "Told you she notices everything," she called after him. The ride to the top floor was silent. Ethan tried not to worry. It was his first day. Surely he hadn't screwed up badly enough to get fired already. Doctor. Vale's office looked the same as Friday. Impressive, intimidating, with that view of the city that made everything else feel small. She was standing at the window when he entered, her back to him, wearing a white coat over a dark dress. "Mr. Cole, thank you for coming up." She turned, and he noticed she was moving easier than Friday, the bandage on her temple smaller. "I heard about the incident on the 4th floor today. I'm sorry if I overstepped. Rodriguez said I should have waited for—" "You helped evacuate a critical patient safely. The surgical team was quite grateful." She moved to her desk, gesturing for him to sit. "But I didn't call you up here to discuss that. I wanted to check in on your first day, make sure everything is meeting expectations." "It's good. Great, actually. The team seems solid, the equipment is excellent, and Marcus is a good supervisor." "But?" She tilted her head slightly, studying him. "I sense a but." Ethan hesitated. "I'm grateful for the opportunity. I am. But I also want to make sure I'm earning it, that I'm not just here because I pulled you out of a bus." "You're worried about charity." It wasn't a question. "I'm worried about perception. Other people wondering why I got hired so fast, whether I deserve to be here." Dr. Vale leaned back in her chair, a slight smile playing at her lips. "Do you know how many applications we process for maintenance positions? Hundreds. And do you know how many of those applicants I personally interview? None. 0. I have a facilities director for that. But I interviewed you, and I hired you, and yes, it was because you saved my life. Does that bother you?" "Honestly, a little." "Good." She nodded approvingly. "That means you have integrity. But let me be clear, Mr. Cole. I didn't hire you just out of gratitude. I hired you because Rodriguez's report from today confirms what I already suspected. You're competent, quick-thinking, and willing to go above and beyond. Those are qualities I value. The fact that I also owe you my life is simply a bonus. So I'm not here on charity. You're here because I believe you'll be an asset to my organization. If you prove me wrong, I'll fire you just as quickly as I hired you. Fair?" Ethan couldn't help but smile. "Fair. Good. Now go home to your daughter. First days are exhausting." She stood, extending her hand. "Welcome to Vale Health Systems, Mr. Cole. I look forward to watching you succeed here." Her handshake was firm, professional, but Ethan noticed her fingers lingered on his for just a moment longer than necessary. Or maybe he imagined it. Probably he imagined it. The drive home felt different. The same streets, the same potholes, the same struggling neighborhoods, but somehow it all looked more temporary now. Like this wasn't the end of the road, but just a waypoint on the journey to somewhere better. Emma was waiting with Mrs. Chen when he got home, practically bouncing with excitement. How was it? Did you meet important people? Did you fix important things? It was good, baby. Really good. Ethan picked her up, spinning her around despite his aching back. I think we're going to be okay. I already knew that, Daddy, but it's good you finally figured it out. That night, after Emma was asleep, Ethan stood on their small balcony, barely big enough for one person, and looked out at the city. Somewhere out there, in a penthouse or a mansion or wherever people like Dr. Alexandra Vale lived, she was probably still working, still making decisions that affected thousands of lives. And somehow, impossibly, their lives had intersected. A bus fire, a moment of courage or stupidity. And now here he was, standing on the edge of a life he'd never imagined possible. Ethan thought about the inscription on her necklace. To heal is to hope. Maybe that applied to more than just medicine. Maybe it applied to broken lives too. Maybe the act of pulling someone from fire was a kind of healing. And maybe accepting help wasn't charity, but hope. Hope that things could be better, that struggling didn't have to be permanent, that single fathers and their daughters deserve stability too. His phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. First day successful, well done, AV. Ethan stared at the message. Dr. Vale had his personal number. Dr. Vale was texting him at 10 p.m. to congratulate him on his first day. Dr. Vale, who ran an empire and had 100 more important things to do, had taken time to send him 3 words and 2 initials. He typed back, "Thank you for the opportunity. I won't let you down." The response came immediately. "I know you won't." Ethan saved the number in his phone, then stood on the balcony for a while longer, feeling the cold night air and wondering what he'd gotten himself into. This was more than just a new job. This was a door opening into a world he didn't understand, guided by a woman who was brilliant and powerful and completely out of his league in every conceivable way. But she'd given him a chance, and Ethan Cole, mechanic and single father and accidental hero, was going to prove he deserved it, even if it scared him, especially because it scared him. The week unfolded in a rhythm of learning and doing. Rodriguez proved to be an excellent teacher, patient when Ethan asked questions but demanding when it came to standards. The work was challenging in ways that satisfied him, complex systems that required both knowledge and intuition to understand. By Thursday, Marcus had him working solo on simple repairs. By Friday, he was on the emergency rotation, which meant his phone could ring at any hour if a critical system failed. "Welcome to the big leagues," Rodriguez said, clapping him on the shoulder. "You're officially one of us now, bus guy." "Does that mean you'll stop calling me bus guy?" "Absolutely not. You earned that nickname. Wear it with pride." Friday evening, as Ethan was clocking out, he ran into Dr. Vale in the lobby. Literally ran into her. He was looking at his phone and she was coming around a corner, and they collided with enough force that she dropped the files she was carrying. "Oh God, I'm so sorry." Ethan crouched immediately, gathering papers. "It's fine, Mr. Cole. No harm done." She knelt beside him, helping collect the scattered documents. "How was your first week?" "Good, really good. The team is great, the work is interesting, but..." She looked at him, a slight smile on her lips. "Why do you keep assuming there's a but?" "Because there usually is, especially with people who think too much, which I suspect you do." She wasn't wrong. Ethan handed her a stack of papers, noticing how close they were, both kneeling on the lobby floor like kids picking up dropped books. "I guess I'm just wondering when the other shoe drops. When I wake up, and this was all a dream." "The other shoe isn't dropping, Ethan. This is real. You're doing good work, you're fitting in well, and barring any catastrophic failures, this job is yours for as long as you want it." She stood, smoothing her skirt. "Now, I have a dinner meeting in an hour that I'm dreading. Have a good weekend." "You too, Dr. Vale." "Alexandra." She said it softly. almost like a confession. When it's just us, you can call me Alexandra. Ethan watched her walk away, her heels clicking on the marble floor, and felt something shift in his chest, something dangerous and stupid and completely inappropriate. He drove home trying not to think about the way she'd looked at him when she said her name, trying not to read meaning into a simple courtesy. She was his boss. She was one of the most powerful people in the city. She was so far above him socially and economically that the distance couldn't be measured in normal units. But she'd asked him to call her Alexandra. Emma noticed his distraction over dinner. "You're thinking about something. Just work stuff." "Is it a good thinking or a worried thinking?" "I'm not sure yet, baby. Ask me again in a few weeks." That night, Ethan lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the radiator clank and feeling the weight of possibilities pressing down on him. A week ago, his life had been simple, hard, exhausting, barely making ends meet, but simple. Now everything was complicated in ways he couldn't fully articulate. He had a good job, he had stability, he had hope for the first time in years, and he had the memory of a woman kneeling beside him on a marble floor, saying her name like it was a secret. Ethan rolled over, punching his pillow into submission, and tried to sleep. Monday would come soon enough, bringing with it more work, more complications, and more interactions with a woman he absolutely, definitely could not afford to develop feelings for. No matter how she looked at him when she said her name. The call came at 2:30 in the morning, 3 weeks into Ethan's new job. His phone screamed into the darkness, dragging him from dreams he couldn't remember into cold reality. Emma stirred in her room but didn't wake. "Cole here," he mumbled, already swinging his legs out of bed. "Ethan, it's Marcus. We've got an emergency at Mercy West. Main generator failed and the backup isn't kicking in. Or Suite 3 is in the middle of a cardiac surgery. I'm sending you and Rodriguez." The adrenaline hit his system like ice water. "I'm 20 minutes out. Make it 15. Lives on the line." Ethan was dressed and out the door in 3 minutes, leaving a note for Emma that Mrs. Chen would find when she came up to get her ready for school. The streets were empty, slick with November rain, and Ethan pushed his truck faster than he should have. Emergency flashers on, running yellow lights that were already turning red. Rodriguez was waiting in the hospital parking lot when he arrived, her van idling, tools already loaded. She was on her phone talking fast. "We're here? 5 minutes to assessment." She hung up as Ethan jumped in. Cardiac surgery, 42-year-old male. They're running on battery backup, but that'll last maybe 10 more minutes. After that, every machine in that OR goes dark. They ran through the building, their tool bags banging against their legs. Staff moved aside, recognizing the maintenance uniforms, understanding the urgency. The OR suite was on the 3rd floor, and they took the stairs because elevators felt too slow. The backup generator room was a cramped space filled with machinery that hummed and rattled. One generator was silent, cold. The backup should have engaged automatically, but sat dormant, its control panel dark. "Talk to me, Cole," Rodriguez said, already pulling access panels off the main unit. Ethan moved to the backup, his hands working on instinct and training. "Control panel dead." He traced the power lines, checking connections, looking for the failure point. There. A relay switch, corroded and seized. Simple fix, but it required replacing a part they didn't have on hand. "Relay's shot on the backup," he called out. "Main generator?" "Fuel line blockage. I can clear it, but it'll take 20 minutes minimum." 20 minutes they didn't have. Ethan's mind raced through options. The relay couldn't be replaced, but maybe it could be bypassed. Dangerous, against protocol, but possible. He grabbed wire cutters and started stripping cables. "What are you doing?" Rodriguez asked. "Bypassing the relay. Manual engagement." "That's not protocol. You got a better idea with 8 minutes of battery left?" She didn't. Rodriguez returned to the main generator while Ethan worked feverishly on the backup, sweat dripping despite the cold room. His hands remembered the work from 100 similar repairs, muscle memory taking over where thought would be too slow. 6 minutes. 5. 4. "I'm through the blockage," Rodriguez shouted. "Starting the main generator now." The machine coughed, turned over, caught. The lights in the room brightened as power flowed, but it was inconsistent, stuttering. "It's not stable yet," Rodriguez said, monitoring the output. "We need the backup to smooth the load." 3 minutes. Ethan twisted the final connection, double-checked his work, then threw the manual engage switch he'd jury-rigged. The backup generator roared to life, and suddenly the power flowing to the OR suite was stable, strong, sustained. 2 minutes to spare. Rodriguez slumped against the wall, breathing hard. You just broke about 15 safety regulations. I also just saved a life. Fair point. She pulled out her radio. Marcus, this is Rodriguez. Power restored to OR3. Both generators running, but backup is on manual bypass. Cole's gonna need to stay here until we can get a replacement relay. Copy that. Good work, both of you. They stayed in that cramped room for the next 3 hours while Rodriguez cleaned the main generator properly and Ethan monitored the backup. Hospital maintenance brought coffee around 4 a.m., terrible and lukewarm, but welcome. Around 6, a tech from surgical came down to tell them the patient had survived, surgery successful, thanks in large part to them keeping the power on. You saved his life, the tech said simply, then went back upstairs. Rodriguez looked at Ethan across the generator room. You know what you did was dangerous, right? If that bypass had failed, it didn't. But if it had, you could have fried every piece of equipment in that OR, could have killed the patient instead of saving him. I know. Ethan took a sip of the terrible coffee. But it didn't. And I was pretty sure it wouldn't. Pretty sure isn't good enough in this job, Cole. It was this time. She studied him for a long moment. You got hero syndrome, bus guy. It's going to get you in trouble one of these days. Maybe she was right, but Ethan had learned something about himself the night of the bus fire. When faced with a choice between action and caution, between risk and safety, his instinct was always to act, to try, to fight against the idea that there was nothing to be done. The replacement relay arrived at 7 a.m., delivered by a sleepy warehouse worker. Ethan installed it properly, removed his jury-rigged bypass, and returned the backup generator to automatic control. By the time they finished, Emma was already at school and the morning shift was arriving. Ethan drove home in full daylight, exhausted and wired, his clothes smelling like diesel and sweat. He showered, tried to sleep, managed about 2 hours before giving up. His mind wouldn't stop replaying the night, the seized relay, the desperate bypass, the knowledge that someone's life hung in the balance of his decision. His phone buzzed around noon. A text from Alexandra. Heard about last night? Impressive work. Also reckless. We need to talk. Ethan groaned. Of course she'd heard. She probably knew before the surgery was even finished. He texted back. When? My office. 2 p.m. He had 3 hours to figure out if he was about to be praised or fired. Knowing Alexandra, probably both. Vale Medical Center's lobby felt different in afternoon light. Less intimidating, more human. Ethan took the elevator to the top floor, his stomach tight with anxiety. Patricia Mendoza wasn't at her desk, which somehow made things worse. He knocked on Alexandra's door. Come in. She was standing at the window again, her back to him, hands clasped behind her. The pose was becoming familiar. Her thinking stance, he was starting to realize. You bypassed a safety relay to manually engage a backup generator, she said without turning around. Want to explain your reasoning? 3 minutes of battery life left. Main generator unstable. Patient on the table with his chest open. The math was simple. The math was dangerous. She turned to face him, her expression unreadable. You violated protocol, took unnecessary risks, and could have caused catastrophic failure. But I didn't. This time. What about next time? What about the time after that when you guess wrong and someone dies because you thought you knew better than the safety regulations? Ethan met her eyes, refusing to look away. I didn't guess. I knew that bypass would work. I've done similar repairs dozens of times. At an auto shop, not in a hospital OR. Principles are the same. Electricity doesn't care if it's flowing through a car or a generator. No, but I care about liability. I care about protocols that exist for good reasons. I care about not having my maintenance staff make cowboy decisions that could cost lives. She moved closer, her heels clicking on the floor. Do you understand what I'm saying, Ethan? You're saying I screwed up. I'm saying you saved a life by taking a massive risk, and I'm grateful for the outcome while simultaneously terrified of the precedent. She leaned against her desk, arms crossed. Rodriguez wants me to write you up. Marcus wants me to promote you. I'm somewhere in the middle trying to figure out if you're brilliantly talented or dangerously reckless. Can't I be both? A ghost of a smile touched her lips. That's what worries me. They stood in silence for a moment, the weight of unspoken things hanging between them. Ethan noticed she looked tired, faint circles under her eyes, tension in her shoulders. Whatever she'd been dealing with, it was taking its toll. I won't apologize for saving that man's life, Ethan said finally. But I understand your position. If you need to fire me, I get it. I'm not firing you, she sighed, running a hand through her hair in a gesture of frustration. I'm asking you to be more careful, to follow protocols except in the most extreme circumstances, and to trust that the safety regulations exist for good reasons. I can do that. Can you? Or will you keep rushing into fires, literal and metaphorical, because that's who you are? The question hung in the air, more profound than she probably intended. Ethan thought about the bus, about the generator, about every moment in his life when he'd chosen action over caution. She was right. This was who he was, for better or worse. I'll try, he said honestly. That's the best I can promise. Alexandra studied him, her expression softening slightly. I suppose that will have to be enough. She pushed off the desk, moving to her computer. There's something else we need to discuss. The gala. The what? The annual Healthcare Advancement Gala. It's in 3 weeks. Black tie event, donors and board members. The whole circus. I'm giving the keynote address. She pulled up something on her screen, then turned it to face him. And I want you there. Ethan stared at the invitation on the screen. Elegant script, expensive paper, the kind of event he'd never in his life attended. Why? Because I'm going to publicly acknowledge what happened the night of the bus fire, and I want the person who saved my life to be there when I do. That's really not necessary. It is to me. Her voice was firm, brooking no argument. You gave me my life back, Ethan. The least I can do is say thank you in a way that actually means something. I don't have a tux. We'll provide one. And before you say it's charity, consider it a work uniform. You're representing Vail Health Systems, which means you dress appropriately. She closed the laptop. I'm not asking, Ethan. I'm telling you. You're coming to the gala. There was something in her tone that suggested this mattered to her more than simple gratitude, like she needed him there for reasons she wasn't articulating. Ethan wanted to refuse, wanted to stay in his comfortable zone of fixing things in basements and going home to Emma, but the look in Alexandra's eyes stopped him. Okay, he said, I'll be there. Good, she smiled, genuine and warm. Now go home and get some sleep. You look exhausted. You don't look much better. The words came out before he could stop them. Alexandra's eyebrows rose, but she didn't seem offended. Board meeting this morning. Budget battles. The glamorous life of a hospital CEO. Sounds worse than generator rooms. At least you can fix a generator. Some problems don't have mechanical solutions. She walked him to the door. Get some rest, Ethan, and thank you for last night, for doing what needed to be done, even if it gave me a heart attack when I heard about it. Her hand brushed his arm as she reached for the door handle, a fleeting touch that probably meant nothing but sent electricity through Ethan's nerves anyway. He left before he could do something stupid like acknowledge the attraction that was becoming harder to ignore. The next 3 weeks passed in a blur of work and preparation. The generator incident had earned Ethan a reputation among the maintenance staff. Some admired his quick thinking, others thought he was a liability waiting to happen. Rodriguez remained firmly in the latter camp, watching him with wary eyes during their shifts together. Emma noticed the changes too. Her father was distracted, distant, lost in thoughts he couldn't quite explain to a 7-year-old. Are you worried about something, Daddy? She asked one night over dinner. Just work stuff, baby. You always say that, but this is different. You look scared. Ethan set down his fork. I'm not scared, just navigating some new territory. Like when I started 2nd grade and everything was different? Yeah, exactly like that. Mrs. Patterson says when you're scared of new things, you should be brave and try anyway. Is that what you're doing? I'm trying, Em. I'm really trying. She reached across the table and patted his hand with the solemn gravity only children can manage. You're good at being brave. You'll figure it out.
If only it were that simple. The tux arrived a week before the gala, delivered to his apartment by a courier who looked mildly scandalized by the building's condition. It fit perfectly, which meant someone had taken his measurements without him noticing, probably during one of the many equipment fittings in the maintenance shop. The attention to detail was impressive and slightly unnerving. 3 days before the event, Alexandra called him directly instead of texting. "I need a favor," she said without preamble. "Okay?" "The gala's at the Grand City Hall. I'd like you to ride with me. In my car. It'll be easier for the entrance, photographs, the whole production." "You want me to arrive with you? Won't that seem professional, appropriate?" "You saved my life, Ethan. Arriving together makes perfect sense." It made sense, and no sense at all. Arriving together implied a connection beyond professional courtesy. But arguing with Alexandra when she'd made up her mind was like arguing with a hurricane, pointless and exhausting. "What time?" 6:30. I'll have my driver pick you up at 6. "I need to make sure Emma's taken care of. Already arranged. Mrs. Chen will stay with her, and my office is covering her usual fee plus extra. Emma will be fine." Of course she'd already arranged it. Alexandra thought 10 steps ahead while most people were still figuring out step 1. The night of the gala arrived cold and clear. Ethan kissed Emma goodbye, adjusted his bow tie for the 100th time, and waited on the street for the car that seemed too expensive to be picking him up. A black Mercedes rolled up precisely at 6, and the driver, a different one than before, stepped out to open the door. "Mr. Cole, Dr. Vale is expecting you." The interior smelled like leather and money. Ethan had never felt more out of place. They drove through the city toward the downtown core, each mile taking him further from his world and deeper into hers. The Grand City Hall appeared in the distance, lit up like a palace, luxury cars already lining the entrance. They pulled up to a side entrance where Alexandra was waiting, and Ethan's breath caught despite his best efforts. She was wearing a midnight blue gown that somehow managed to be elegant and understated simultaneously, her hair up in a way that showed the graceful line of her neck. The necklace, her mother's necklace, gleamed at her throat. "You clean up well," she said as he stepped out. "I was going to say the same thing." She smiled, slipping her arm through his. "Shall we? And fair warning, there will be cameras, lots of cameras. Just smile and don't say anything controversial." Define controversial. Anything political, anything about hospital finances, and definitely don't mention the generator incident. I'm still getting complaints about that from the safety committee. They walked toward the entrance together, and immediately the cameras started flashing. Reporters called out questions. Alexandra handled it with practiced ease, smiling and deflecting, her arm still linked with Ethan's like they did this every week. "Dr. Vale, who's your date?" "This is Ethan Cole, a valued member of our maintenance team. You might remember him from the Highway 47 bus incident." More flashes, more questions. Ethan tried to smile, tried to look natural, tried not to think about how tomorrow every news outlet would have photos of him with the city's most powerful healthcare executive. Inside, the Grand City Hall was overwhelming. Crystal chandeliers, marble everything, people in clothes that probably cost more than his truck. Alexandra guided him through the crowd with the confidence of someone who belonged, introducing him to donors and board members whose names he immediately forgot. "Just breathe," she murmured during a brief moment alone. "You're doing fine." "I feel like I'm wearing someone else's skin. Welcome to my entire life." She said it lightly, but there was an edge of truth underneath. "Come on. Let me show you the real reason I wanted you here." She led him away from the main ballroom, down a quieter corridor to a smaller room where photographs lined the walls. Hospital photos, historical pictures, moments captured across decades. "This is the Heritage Room," Alexandra explained. "Photos of everyone who helped build Vale Health Systems from nothing." She stopped in front of an older photograph. A nurse in vintage scrubs smiling despite obvious exhaustion. "That's my mother. St. Michael's ER, 1982. The resemblance was clear. The same determined jaw, the same intelligent eyes. "She looks like she was incredible." She was. Worked herself to death, literally. Heart attack at 53, probably brought on by years of double shifts and stress. Alexandra touched the frame gently. "I built this company partly in her memory. To heal is to hope, right?
but also to remember that healthcare workers are humans too, that they deserve support, decent pay, manageable hours. Is that why you were on that bus, the night of the accident? She glanced at him, surprised. You figured that out? People like you don't usually ride public transit. I've been wondering. Alexandra smiled, a real smile that reached her eyes. I ride the bus once a month. Different routes, different times. I want to see what my employees see, experience what they experience. The nurse who can't afford a car, the tech working night shifts. I want to understand their lives. That's why you were coming from the late shift route. Exactly. Probably stupid, definitely a security risk, but it keeps me grounded. She turned back to her mother's photo. You remind me of her, actually. That instinct to help, consequences be damned. She was the same way. Before Ethan could respond, Patricia Mendoza appeared in the doorway. Dr. Vale, it's time for your speech. The main ballroom was packed with the city's elite. Politicians, business people, other hospital executives. Ethan found a spot near the back while Alexandra took the stage, commanding attention the moment she stepped to the microphone. Her speech was everything you'd expect. Gracious thanks to donors, updates on hospital initiatives, vision for the future. But then her tone shifted, became more personal. 3 weeks ago, I was in a bus accident. Some of you might have seen the news coverage. What you might not know is that without the actions of one particular individual, I wouldn't be standing here tonight. The spotlight swung to find Ethan, and he wanted to sink through the floor. Ethan Cole, a mechanic at the time, pulled me from a burning bus when he had every reason to save himself instead. He didn't know who I was. He didn't know I could offer him anything in return. He just saw someone who needed help, and he helped. That, ladies and gentlemen, is the kind of character we should all aspire to. Applause filled the room. People turned to look at him. Ethan felt his face burning, but Alexandra wasn't done. In healthcare, we talk about healing, about hope. But sometimes the most profound healing comes not from medical intervention, but from simple human courage. Ethan gave me my life back. And in return, I'm honored that he's now part of the Vale Health Systems family, helping us maintain the facilities that save lives every single day. More applause. Alexandra's eyes found his across the room, and in that moment, Ethan understood. This wasn't just about thanking him publicly. This was about validation, telling the world, telling the board, telling everyone who mattered in her world that he belonged, that he was valued, that his life had intersected with hers in a way that transcended social boundaries. The rest of the gala passed in a blur. People wanted to shake his hand, hear his story, treat him like some kind of hero when he still just felt like a mechanic who'd done what needed doing. Alexandra worked the room, always aware of where he was, occasionally catching his eye across the crowd. Around 11, she found him on a balcony where he'd escaped for air. Sorry about the spotlight, she said, joining him at the railing. I might have gone a bit overboard. You think? I wanted people to know, to understand that heroism doesn't have a price tag or a pedigree. I'm not a hero, Alexandra. I just did what anyone would do. No, you did what you would do. Most people would have driven past. She turned to face him, close enough that he could smell her perfume, something subtle and expensive. Thank you for being here tonight. I know this isn't your world. It's really not. Is that a bad thing? Ethan looked at her, this brilliant, powerful woman who ran an empire and rode city buses to understand her employees' lives. I don't know yet. Ask me again in a few months. I will. She held his gaze, something unspoken passing between them. Then Patricia appeared again, calling her back inside for more rounds of donor schmoozing. Ethan stayed on the balcony a while longer, looking out at the city lights and wondering what the hell he'd gotten himself into. A month ago, he was a struggling mechanic counting pennies. Now he was wearing a tux at a gala, being praised by one of the most powerful people in the city, feeling things he absolutely shouldn't feel. The car took him home around midnight. Emma was asleep, Mrs. Chen drowsing on the couch. He paid her, thanked her, then stood in Emma's doorway watching his daughter sleep in her too-small room in their too-small apartment. Everything was changing. Everything had changed, and Ethan wasn't sure if he was ready for what came next. His phone buzzed, a text from Alexandra. Thank you again for tonight. You gave me more than your presence. You gave me hope that good people still exist. Sleep well. A. Ethan looked at the message for a long time before responding. You make it easy to hope. Thank you for everything. Her reply came immediately, just 2 words that carried more weight than they should. Just beginning. The photograph appeared in the Sunday paper, front page of the lifestyle section. Alexandra in her midnight blue gown, Ethan in his borrowed tux, her arm linked through his, both of them smiling at something outside the frame. The caption read, Dr. Alexandra Vale with Ethan Cole, the maintenance worker who saved her life, at Friday's Healthcare Advancement Gala. Emma found it first, squealing with delight over her cereal. Daddy, you're in the newspaper! You look so fancy! Ethan stared at the photo, his coffee forgotten. They looked good together. Natural, like they belonged in each other's orbit. That was the problem. That was the dangerous illusion that would get him hurt if he wasn't careful. His phone started ringing before 8 a.m. Frank, congratulating him. Mrs. Chen asking if he was dating that rich hospital lady. Rodriguez texting, saw the photo, you're playing with fire, bus guy. Different kind than the generator, but still gonna burn. She wasn't wrong. Monday morning, the hospital felt different. People stared, whispered. The photo had made the rounds, and suddenly Ethan wasn't just the new maintenance tech or even the bus hero. He was the guy who'd shown up to the gala with Dr. Vale, who'd been publicly praised, who'd crossed some invisible line between staff and, what, friend? Something else? Marcus called him into the office before his shift started. You doing okay, Cole? I know the attention can be intense. I'm fine. Because if you need to transfer to a different facility for a while, let the attention die down. I said I'm fine. Ethan's voice came out harder than intended. Sorry, I just want to do my job. Fair enough. But heads up. Some people are saying you're getting special treatment because of Dr. Vale. That you bypassed the relay last month and didn't get written up because you're her favorite. Just be aware of the politics. Ethan had never been good at politics. He fixed things. He showed up, did the work, went home. But apparently that wasn't enough anymore. Apparently saving someone's life came with complications that extended far beyond the moment of rescue. He threw himself into work with renewed focus, taking the least desirable assignments, working late, proving through action what words couldn't convey. By Wednesday, some of the tension had eased. By Friday, he was starting to believe maybe things would settle back to normal. Then Alexandra showed up in the maintenance shop. She never came to the basement, ever. Her appearance sent ripples of shock through the crew. Rodriguez actually dropped the wrench she was holding. Mr. Cole, may I have a word? Alexandra's voice was professional, her expression neutral, but Ethan saw the strain around her eyes. They walked to an empty equipment room. She closed the door. We have a problem, she said without preamble. The photo. The photo, the attention, the rumors that are circulating. My board is concerned about optics, about whether I'm showing favoritism, about whether my judgment is compromised. She leaned against a work table, suddenly looking exhausted. I have a meeting with them this afternoon. They're going to ask about you, about why I hired you, about whether our relationship is appropriate. Our relationship? We don't have a relationship. You're my boss. I work here. I know that. You know that. But perception matters in my world, and right now the perception is that I'm giving special treatment to someone I'm involved with. The word hung between them, loaded with implications neither had voiced. So what do you want me to do? Ethan asked. Quit? Transfer? Pretend the gala didn't happen. I want... Alexandra stopped, frustration creasing her features. I don't know what I want. I want to run my hospitals without board members questioning my every decision. I want to acknowledge the person who saved my life without it becoming a scandal. I want... She met his eyes. I want things to be simpler than they are. Nothing about this has ever been simple. No, it hasn't. She pushed off the table, pacing the small room. The board wants me to distance myself from you, publicly. No more interactions beyond what's professionally necessary. They think it will make the optics problem go away. And what do you think? I think they're probably right. I think the smart play is to step back, let time pass, let people forget. She stopped pacing, facing him. I also think it's cowardly. And I don't do cowardly. Ethan felt something shift in his chest. What are you saying? I'm saying that I've built this organization on principles, integrity, recognizing good people, not letting politics dictate how I treat the people who work for me. She moved closer. I'm saying that if they want me to throw you under the bus, metaphorically this time, to save face, they're going to be disappointed. Alexandra, you don't have to. Yes, I do. Because if I cave on this, if I let the board dictate who I can acknowledge and how, then what's the point of any of it? Her voice was fierce, passionate. You saved my life, Ethan. And more than that, you've been an excellent employee. You deserve to be here. And I'm not going to pretend otherwise just because it makes some board members uncomfortable. You could lose support, funding. This could hurt your hospitals. Then I'll deal with it, but I won't compromise on this. She reached out, almost touching his arm, then pulled back. I need you to trust me. Can you do that? Ethan thought about the past weeks, the job, the opportunities, the way his life had transformed. He thought about Emma in her new shoes, about the medical bills that were suddenly manageable, about the hope he'd found in the middle of his exhaustion. Alexandra had given him all of that, not out of obligation, but because she believed he'd earned it. I trust you, he said simply. Relief washed over her face. Good. Now I need to prepare for the most unpleasant board meeting of my career. Wish me luck. You don't need luck. You need them to remember who's in charge. She smiled, genuine and warm. I like the way you think, Mr. Cole. After she left, Rodriguez appeared in the doorway. That looked intense. Board's giving her grief about hiring me. Called it. Politics always gets messy. Rodriguez studied him. You falling for her, bus guy? What? No, she's my boss. She's way out of your league, I know. Doesn't answer the question. Ethan didn't have an answer, or rather, he had one he wasn't ready to acknowledge. The board meeting apparently went late into the evening. Ethan heard secondhand from Patricia Mendoza, who called him around 8 p.m. Dr. Vale wanted me to inform you that the board has agreed to support her position. There will be no changes to your employment status. However, she did agree to be more mindful of public appearances going forward. What does that mean? It means she fought for you, Mr. Cole, and she won. But there are compromises. There always are. That night, Ethan got a text from Alexandra. Survive the Inquisition, your job is secure. My reputation slightly less so, but that's tomorrow's problem. Thank you for trusting me. He typed and deleted several responses before settling on, Thank you for fighting. You didn't have to. Her reply? Yes, I did. The next few weeks settled into a new rhythm. Alexandra was less visible around the hospital, whether by choice or by board mandate. When they did cross paths, their interactions were brief, professional, devoid of the easy warmth that had started developing. Ethan told himself it was better this way, safer, less complicated. He threw himself into work and into Emma. They started apartment hunting in better neighborhoods, places with actual bedrooms and windows that closed properly. The money from his salary and the saved medical expenses made it possible to dream bigger than their cramped studio. I like this one, Emma said, spinning in the empty living room of a 2-bedroom place in a decent school district. Can we really afford it? We can really afford it, baby. She threw her arms around him, and Ethan felt the weight of years of struggle lifting slightly. This was what mattered, providing for his daughter, building stability, creating a life that wasn't defined by counting pennies and choosing between heat and groceries. But late at night, when Emma was asleep and he was alone with his thoughts, Ethan found himself thinking about Alexandra, about the way she'd fought for him, about the text messages that had become less frequent but more meaningful, about the connection that had formed between them, forged in fire and tempered by the complicated realities of their different worlds. December brought the first real snow and a crisis that would test everything. The call came on a Saturday afternoon. Ethan was helping Emma build a snowman in the courtyard when his phone rang. Marcus, his voice tight with controlled panic. Cole, we need you at Central. Now, main hospital. We've got a situation. What kind of situation? The kind where you need to get here 5 minutes ago. Ethan called Mrs. Chen, who came down to stay with Emma, then drove through the snow to the hospital. The parking lot was chaos. Fire trucks, police cars, emergency vehicles everywhere. Black smoke was pouring from the east wing, and staff were evacuating patients in organized chaos. Rodriguez met him at the entrance, already in full gear. Electrical fire in the basement started in the old wiring near the records storage. It's spreading fast, and there are concerns about the whole electrical system going down. What do you need me to do? We need to manually shut down the main power grid before the fire reaches it. If it blows, we lose everything. Life support, surgical suites, the works. But the shutoff is in the basement, near the fire. Of course it was. They geared up. Fire-resistant suits, breathing masks, the works. The basement was hell. Smoke so thick the lights barely penetrated. The heat was oppressive, and Ethan could hear the fire roaring somewhere close. Rodriguez led the way through familiar corridors, made alien by smoke and fear. The main shut-off panel was in a room already filled with smoke. Through the haze, Ethan could see flames licking at the walls, getting closer. They had minutes at most. "Start with the non-critical systems," Rodriguez shouted over the noise. "Work down to life support last. Give them time to switch to battery backup." They worked in tandem, flipping switches, cutting power in carefully calculated stages. The process should have taken 5 minutes. With the fire closing in, they had maybe 3. Ethan's hands were steady despite the heat, despite the fear, despite the memories of another fire threatening to overwhelm him. He thought about the patients upstairs, about the doctors and nurses trusting that he'd keep the systems running long enough to save lives. He thought about Alexandra somewhere in this building, probably refusing to evacuate until every patient was safe. The last switch, life support, critical care, the systems that kept people breathing, hearts beating, lives continuing. "Now!" Rodriguez shouted. Ethan threw the switch. The room plunged into darkness except for the flames. Emergency lights kicked in, running on battery backup. They'd done it. "Move! Now!" Rodriguez grabbed his arm, pulling him toward the exit. Behind them, something exploded, probably a transformer. The blast sent them stumbling, but they kept moving, navigating by feel and memory through smoke-filled corridors. They burst out of the basement into the main lobby, gasping for air, covered in soot. Fire crews moved past them, heading into the inferno they'd just escaped. Medical staff were stabilizing evacuated patients, and there, in the middle of the chaos, directing operations with the calm authority of a general, was Alexandra. She saw them emerge, and something in her expression cracked, relief so profound it was almost pain. But she didn't run to them, didn't abandon her post, just held Ethan's gaze for one long moment before returning to the crisis at hand. The fire was contained within 2 hours. No casualties, no critical injuries, all patients safely evacuated or maintained on backup systems. By the time the smoke cleared, it was after midnight. Ethan sat on the curb outside, still in his fire suit, too exhausted to move. Alexandra found him there. She ditched her professional blazer somewhere, her white shirt streaked with soot, her hair falling out of its careful pins. She looked human in a way he'd never seen before, vulnerable and fierce and beautiful in her dishevelment. "You went into the basement," she said, sitting beside him on the cold curb. "Someone had to. It could have killed you. Again. Do you have a death wish?" "I have a life wish, for everyone in that building, including you." She turned to look at him, and in her eyes he saw fear and anger and something else he couldn't name. "I can't keep watching you run into fires, Ethan. My heart can't take it." "Then stop watching. Go back to your office, your board meetings, your safe distance." "I don't want distance." The words came out raw, unfiltered. "That's the problem. I've tried. I've followed the board's guidelines, maintained professional boundaries, done everything I'm supposed to do. And I still—" She stopped, catching herself. "Still what?" "Still think about you, constantly. Still check to see if you're working when I'm at the hospital. Still find excuses to walk past the maintenance shop, even though I have no business being there." She laughed, a bitter sound. "I'm the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar healthcare system, and I'm reduced to walking past the basement hoping to catch a glimpse of my maintenance tech. It's pathetic." "It's not pathetic." Ethan's heart was hammering. "It's exactly what I've been doing. Finding reasons to work late when I know you're still here. Taking assignments at your hospital instead of the others. Rereading your text messages like a teenager." They sat in silence, the admission hanging between them like smoke. This is complicated, Alexandra finally said. Everything about us has been complicated from the start. I'm your boss. There are power dynamics, ethical concerns, 100 reasons why this would be a terrible idea. I know. The board would have a field day. The press would eat it alive. It could damage everything I've built. I know that too. So we should walk away, right now, before this becomes something that can hurt us both. Ethan turned to face her fully. Is that what you want? To walk away? Alexandra met his eyes, and in that moment, all her carefully constructed walls crumbled. No, God help me. No. Then don't. He reached out, his soot-covered hand finding hers. I'm not asking for easy. I'm not asking for simple. But I am asking for a chance, for us to figure out what this is without running away from it. You could lose your job. I could lose my position. The risks. I've run into 2 fires for you already. I think I can handle some angry board members. She laughed, genuine and surprised. You're insane. Probably. You're the one who hired me. Worst decision of my life. Best decision of my life. I can't decide which. Maybe it's both. Alexandra squeezed his hand, soot and all. If we do this, if we try this, it has to be right. No hiding, no sneaking around. I won't disrespect you or myself by making this shameful. Agreed. And we need to be smart. Proper documentation to avoid conflict of interest issues. Maybe you transfer to a different supervisor. Definitely therapy to navigate the power dynamics. You've thought about this. I've thought about little else for weeks. She smiled, tired and hopeful. I'm practical, Ethan. Even when I'm being reckless. Good. I need someone practical. I'm apparently the one who runs into burning buildings. They sat on that curb as dawn broke over the city, hands linked, covered in soot and ash, beginning something that was either very wise or very foolish. Ethan wasn't sure which, and found he didn't care. The months that followed were a masterclass in navigating complicated situations. Ethan transferred to Rodriguez's direct supervision to remove the reporting conflict. They attended therapy, both couples counseling and individual sessions to address the power dynamics. Alexandra met Emma, and the meeting went better than Ethan had feared, his daughter immediately taking to the woman who was brilliant and kind and treated her like a person rather than a child. The board initially reacted with predictable outrage, but Alexandra stood firm. I'm allowed to have a personal life, she told them in a meeting that became legendary among the staff. And I will not apologize for finding happiness with someone who happens to work for this organization. If that's a problem, you're welcome to find a new CEO. They didn't. Partly because Alexandra was too valuable to lose, partly because the press coverage turned surprisingly positive. The narrative of the wealthy CEO falling for the working-class hero who saved her life played better than anyone expected. It helped that Ethan was genuinely good at his job, that his co-workers respected him, that the relationship was clearly built on mutual respect rather than opportunism. By spring, they'd found their rhythm. Ethan and Emma moved into a better apartment, not mansion fancy, but comfortable with 2 real bedrooms and windows that actually closed. Emma thrived in her new school district. Ethan's salary and Alexandra's support had stabilized their medical situation. They were building something real. Alexandra still worked too much, still carried the weight of her hospitals on her shoulders. But now, sometimes she came home to Ethan's apartment and let him cook her dinner while Emma chattered about her day. She learned to slow down, to be present, to accept that healing wasn't just something she provided others, but something she deserved too. Ethan learned to navigate her world without losing himself in it. He still fixed things, still got his hands dirty, still found satisfaction in solving mechanical problems. But he also learned about board politics and healthcare economics, and the complex web of relationships that kept a hospital system running. They weren't perfect. They fought about work-life balance, about Emma's needs versus Alexandra's schedule, about the public scrutiny that never quite disappeared. But they fought fair, and they always came back to each other, remembering the fire that had brought them together. The 1-year anniversary of the bus accident fell on a Thursday. Alexandra took the day off, unprecedented, and insisted on riding the evening bus route where it had happened. Ethan joined her, Emma between them, as the bus traced the familiar path along Highway 47. "What are we doing, Daddy?" Emma asked, confused by the unusual outing. "Remembering something important," Ethan said. The bus stopped at a red light near the spot where the accident had occurred. Someone had placed a small memorial, flowers, and a plaque honoring the emergency responders who'd helped that night. Alexandra stared out the window at it, her hand finding Ethan's. "I almost died here," she said quietly. "You didn't, though. You're here. We're here. Because of you. Because of a lot of things. Timing, luck, the fact that you're too stubborn to die." She smiled. "I am pretty stubborn. That's why I like you. Just like love. That's why I love you." It was the first time he'd said it. The words hung in the air between them, weighted with meaning and history and the fire that had forged their connection. Alexandra turned to face him fully, her eyes bright with emotion. "I love you too, even though you're reckless and impulsive and give me heart attacks with your hero complex." "Someone's got to keep life interesting." Emma looked between them, scrunching her nose. "Are you guys going to kiss? Because that's gross." They laughed and the bus moved on, carrying them away from the past and toward whatever came next. 6 months later, Ethan knelt in the children's wing of Vale Medical Center, a place where sick kids came for treatment, where Emma now volunteered during her school breaks, where hope lived in the midst of suffering. The wing had been Alexandra's mother's dream, completed years after her death, a testament to healing and hope. Alexandra was there for a ribbon cutting on a new play therapy room, and she froze when she saw Ethan on one knee, a simple ring in his hand, not expensive, but beautiful in its simplicity. "I'm not going to pretend I understand your world," Ethan said, his voice steady despite his nerves. "I'm still a mechanic who fixes things in basements, but I understand you. I understand your heart, your drive, your absolute refusal to quit even when things are impossible. And I want to spend my life understanding you better. So, will you marry me?" The staff watching started crying before Alexandra even answered. Emma was grinning from her spot next to Mrs. Chen. The children in the wing, the ones healthy enough to watch, were waiting with breathless anticipation. Alexandra looked at him. This man who'd pulled her from fire, who'd fought for their relationship when it would have been easier to walk away, who'd shown her that healing worked both ways. She thought about her mother's inscription. "To heal is to hope." "Yes," she said, her voice breaking slightly. "Absolutely yes." The ring fit perfectly, because of course it did. Ethan had measured her finger one night while she slept, practical even in romance. As he stood and she pulled him into a kiss, the children cheered, the staff applauded, and Emma yelled, "Finally!" loud enough that everyone laughed. That evening, they stood on the balcony of Alexandra's penthouse. Ethan still marveled that she lived in a penthouse, looking out at the city lights, the same view she'd shown him from her office, but different now. Not two separate people from different worlds, but two people who'd built a bridge and chosen to cross it together. "You know this is insane, right?" Alexandra said, leaning against him. "The CEO marrying her maintenance tech. The board will never let me live it down." "Let them talk. You've already proved you don't need their approval." "Emma's going to be my stepdaughter. I'll be responsible for school pickups and parent-teacher conferences and all the things I have no idea how to do." "You'll figure it out. You figure everything out. And you'll still be fixing generators and running into fires and giving me heart attacks." "Probably." She turned to face him, her hands on his chest. "I'm terrified." "Me too. But also happy. Happier than I've been in years, maybe ever." "Same." They kissed as the city lights glittered below them, two people who'd found each other in the most unlikely circumstances and decided that unlikely was just another word for meant to be. The fire had ended that night on Highway 47, but for both of them, something better had begun. A partnership built on courage and respect, and the radical idea that healing worked both ways. That sometimes the person you save ends up saving you right back. That hope was a powerful thing, stronger than fire, capable of bridging any distance. And in the children's wing of Vale Medical Center, the inscription on the wall remained, "To heal is to hope." But now it meant something more. Not just about medicine, but about love, about second chances, about the fires we survive and the connections we forge in their aftermath. Ethan Cole had run into a burning bus, not knowing the woman he saved would change his life. Alexandra Vale had been pulled from fire, not knowing her rescuer would teach her how to live again. And together they'd built something neither could have created alone. A family, a future, a story that proved sometimes the most unlikely beginnings lead to the most beautiful endings. The fire that brought them together had long since burned out. But what grew from those ashes would last a lifetime.